Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive chamber, her black uniform stark against the glowing walls that stretched impossibly high above her. The Galactic Council's meeting hall on Kepler Prime was built to make visitors feel small, and it worked. 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle around her, each one representing thousands of years of civilization and technology that made Earth's greatest achievements look like stone tools. The Zephyrians glowed like living crystals, their bodies catching and bending light in ways that hurt to look at directly. The Nebula Collective existed as clouds of sentient gas, held together by force fields that hummed with barely contained energy. The Vorthak clicked and chittered in their insect language, their black shells reflecting nothing. Each species was ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. Elena had been preparing for this moment her entire career. She was humanity's first official ambassador to the Council, chosen because she could keep her composure even when facing beings that could destroy her world with a thought. At least that's what everyone believed. "Honored Council," Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation system. "I come before you today to deliver humanity's formal position regarding the ongoing territorial disputes in the Outer Rim sectors." A sound like breaking glass came from the Zephyrian representative. Through her translator, Elena heard it as laughter. "Territorial disputes?" the crystal being said. "Child species, you have been in space for less than 200 of your years. We have been traveling between stars since before your son was born. You do not get to claim territory." The Nebula Collective's representative swirled with colors that Elena's briefing materials had told her indicated amusement. "The humans are entertaining," the gas cloud said in a voice like distant thunder. "They build their little ships and plant their flags on empty worlds, then call it an empire." Elena kept her face perfectly calm. She had expected this reaction. The Council saw humans as primitives who had barely learned to leave their home planet. They knew about Earth's chemical rockets, their fusion power plants, their crude nuclear weapons. What they didn't know was what humanity had been building in secret for the past 50 years. "I understand your position," Elena said carefully. "However, humanity has established colonies in 17 star systems that we consider our sovereign territory. We have built cities, established trade routes, and created homes for over 50 million human beings. We will not abandon these worlds." The Vorthak representative stood up, his insect body towering over the chamber. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together in a way that made Elena's skin crawl. "Primitive mammals," he said. "Your largest warship carries weapons that could not scratch the paint on our scout vessels. Your threats are meaningless." "I am not making threats," Elena replied. "I am stating facts. Humanity claims sovereignty over our 17 colonial systems. We demand that the Council formally recognize these claims and cease all territorial expansion into human space." The chamber erupted in sounds that the translator couldn't properly convert. Elena heard fragments, laughter, chittering, the grinding of crystal against crystal. The Council speaker, a being called Thane Ka from a species that looked like living metal, raised one hand for silence. "Ambassador Vasquez," Thane Ka said, his voice like grinding gears. "We appreciate that your species has enthusiasm. However, you must understand reality. The galaxy has been governed by this council for over 3,000 years. We have established trade routes, defense networks, and territorial boundaries that maintain peace between hundreds of civilizations. Your species discovered faster than light travel less than a century ago. You do not get to rewrite galactic law because you wish it." Elena had been coached for this exact response. "Speaker Thane Ka, with respect, humanity is not asking to rewrite galactic law. We are asking for the same rights and recognition that every other species in this chamber was granted when they first achieved interstellar travel. Rights must be earned," the Vorthak representative hissed. "Your species has done nothing to earn a voice in galactic affairs. You have no great achievements, no ancient wisdom, no powerful allies. You have chemical rockets and fusion reactors that any first-year engineering student from a real civilization could build with spare parts." The Zephyrian let out another glass-breaking laugh. "Perhaps we should be impressed that they managed to build ships at all. Most species take at least 1,000,000 years to evolve past throwing rocks at each other." Elena felt her jaw clench, but she kept her voice level. "I see that the Council has already made its decision. However, I must formally request that you reconsider. Humanity has more to offer than you realize." "Such as?" Thane Ka asked. and Elena could hear the mockery in his mechanical voice. "Such as the willingness to defend our legitimate claims," Elena said quietly. "We are not asking for charity. We are not begging for protection. We are informing you that we will defend our territory with whatever means necessary." The chamber fell silent for a moment, then exploded again with alien laughter. The Nebula Collective swirled with patterns that Elena's briefing materials had told her indicated extreme amusement. "Oh, this is rich," the gas cloud said. "The baby species is threatening us. What will you do, little human? Throw rocks at our starships? Launch your primitive missiles at our battle stations?" Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing more than a simple communication tablet, but she knew it contained something that would change everything. She just hoped she wouldn't have to use it. "Honored Council," she said formally, "humanity offers one final opportunity for peaceful resolution. Recognize our territorial claims within 72 standard hours or face the consequences." The laughter grew louder. The Vorthak representative was clicking his mandibles so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire. Even Thane's usually controlled demeanor cracked, and Elena could see what she thought might be amusement in his glowing eyes. "Consequences?" Thane said. "Child, we have fleets that could glass your homeworld without slowing down. We have weapons that could crack your moon like an egg. We have technologies that your species won't understand for 1,000 years. What consequences could you possibly threaten us with?" Elena looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the alien eyes of each council member. Some were laughing, some were ignoring her completely, and some were looking at her with what she thought might be pity. None of them looked worried. "You have 72 hours, she repeated. "After that, humanity will take whatever action we deem necessary to protect our people and our territory." "Very well," Thane said, still sounding amused. "We will give you 72 hours to withdraw your ridiculous demands and return to your proper place as a junior species under Council guidance. If you refuse, we will be forced to take appropriate action to maintain galactic peace." Elena bowed formally. "I understand the Council's position. I hope you will remember this conversation in the days to come." She turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, she could hear the Council members already discussing other business, dismissing humanity's ultimatum as the desperate bluff of a primitive species. Elena allowed herself a small smile as she reached the door. The Council thought they knew everything about humanity's capabilities. They had studied Earth's technology, monitored their communications, and observed their military exercises. They were confident that humans posed no threat to their ancient order. They had no idea what was coming. As the chamber doors closed behind her, Elena activated the device in her pocket. A simple message traveled instantly across space to every human colony and military installation in the galaxy. "Protocol 7 is authorized. Repeat, Protocol 7 is authorized." The countdown had begun. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the warship Defiance, watching the countdown timer reach 0. 72 hours had passed since Ambassador Vasquez delivered humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Council. The Council had spent those hours laughing and making jokes about primitive humans and their desperate threats. They had ignored every follow-up message and every attempt at negotiation. Now it was time to show them that humanity was not bluffing. "Status report," Chen said calmly. His hands were clasped behind his back as he stared out at the stars through the bridge's big window. "All Void Lance platforms are in position and ready," reported Lieutenant Commander Park from her station. "Target acquisition is complete. We have clean shots on all 3 patrol fleets," Chen nodded. 3 Council patrol fleets were currently doing routine sweeps in the disputed border regions. Each fleet had over 200 ships, destroyers, cruisers, and battleships that the Council considered standard peacekeeping forces. By their standards, any one of these fleets could destroy Earth's entire military without breaking a sweat. The Council had no idea what they were about to face. "Begin the demonstration," Chen ordered. Throughout human space, weapons that had been built in secret for decades began to power up. The technology behind them was so advanced that most of humanity's own scientists barely understood how they worked. They had been developed by the Special Projects Division, a group of researchers who had been given unlimited resources and told to find ways to defend humanity against threats they could not even imagine yet. The Void Lance project had started as a theoretical exercise. Scientists had wondered if it was possible to create and control artificial black holes, tiny points of gravity that could exist for just long enough to do specific jobs before disappearing harmlessly. Most experts had said it was impossible. The Special Projects team had built it anyway. Void Lance Alpha is locked onto the first fleet, Park reported. Fleet composition: 187 ships ranging from destroyer to dreadnought class. They are currently in formation Delta 7, doing standard patrol sweeps. On his personal communicator, Chen could hear similar reports from the other Void Lance platforms. Beta was targeting a fleet near the Rigel system. Gamma had found the third fleet in the Centauri border region. All three fleets were going about their normal business, completely unaware that they were about to become object lessons in humanity's true capabilities. Fire, Chen said quietly. The weapons fired at the same time across 3 different star systems. From the outside, nothing seemed to happen. The Void Lances did not produce dramatic energy beams or explosive warheads. They simply created tiny tears in space-time itself, each one containing a microscopic black hole that lasted for exactly 0.3 seconds before disappearing. That was long enough. In the Vega system, Council Fleet Designation 7 Alpha was doing a routine patrol when reality suddenly folded in on itself. 203 ships containing over 50,000 alien crew members were pulled into a gravitational field so intense that they were crushed down to the size of atoms in less than a heartbeat. The black hole consumed them completely, then vanished, leaving nothing behind except a faint gravitational echo that would puzzle Council scientists for years to come. The same thing happened at the same time in the Rigel and Centauri systems. 3 entire fleets, representing thousands of years of accumulated technology and military experience, simply stopped existing. Chen waited exactly 10 minutes before opening a communication channel to the Galactic Council chambers on Kepler Prime. He wanted to give their sensors time to register what had happened, time for the reports to reach the Council members, time for the reality of the situation to sink in. When the channel opened, Chen could see the chaos in the Council chambers. Alien beings were rushing back and forth, their translators creating a mess of panicked voices. The Vorthak representative was clicking his mouthparts so fast it sounded like static. The Nebula Collective had turned dark colors that Chen's briefing materials told him meant extreme worry. Speaker Thane Ka appeared on the screen. His metallic face showed none of its usual calm composure. "Human ship," he said, his mechanical voice higher than usual. "We are receiving reports of some kind of attack on our patrol fleets. Our sensors show massive gravitational problems in 3 different systems. What do you know about this?" Chen smiled coldly. "Speaker Thane Ka, I am Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I am contacting you to claim responsibility for the demonstration that just occurred." "Demonstration?" Thane Ka's voice cracked slightly. "3 of our patrol fleets have vanished completely. Our sensors show gravitational distortions that should be impossible." "What kind of weapon did you use?" "The same kind of weapon that will be used against any Council force that enters human space without permission," Chen replied. "We call them Void Lances. Each one creates and controls an artificial black hole. The demonstration you just witnessed was done with our smallest, most precise models. We also have much larger versions." The chamber behind Thane Ka erupted in alien voices. Chen could hear fragments through the translation system. Denials, demands for proof, accusations that the humans were somehow faking the sensor readings. The Zephyrian representative was flashing colors so rapidly that it looked like a broken light display. "This is impossible," the Vorthak representative hissed, pushing his way to the front of the screen. "No species has ever developed such technology. You are using some kind of trick, some illusion to make us believe your pathetic fleet is more powerful than it appears." Chen had expected this reaction. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years by maintaining technological superiority over every other species. The idea that a primitive race like humanity could develop weapons beyond their understanding was simply not something they could accept. "I understand your doubt," Chen said calmly. "However, I suggest you review your sensor data carefully. Your fleets did not explode or break apart. They were not destroyed by energy weapons or kinetic impacts. They were consumed by controlled gravitational collapse, something that should be impossible to fake with any known technology." "Even if this is real," Thane Ka said, his voice getting back some of its usual mechanical precision, 3 attacks prove nothing. Perhaps you had these weapons hidden in those specific systems. Perhaps you can only use them once. The Council maintains thousands of fleets across the galaxy. Chen's smile widened. Speaker Thane K, we currently have 47 operational Void Lance platforms positioned throughout human space and beyond. Each platform can fire multiple times without recharging. Each shot can be precisely targeted to affect anything from a single ship to an entire star system. He paused to let that information sink in, then continued. The demonstration was done using our least powerful weapons to minimize unnecessary loss of life. If the Council continues to ignore human sovereignty, we will be forced to use progressively more destructive methods. The chamber fell silent. Chen could see the Council members looking at each other, communicating in their various alien languages without the benefit of translation. He knew they were trying to decide whether humanity was bluffing, whether the technology was real, whether they could afford to call what might be humanity's bluff. What are your demands? Thane Ka finally asked. The same demands Ambassador Vasquez presented 72 hours ago, Chen replied. Immediate recognition of human sovereignty over our 17 colonial systems, formal acknowledgement of humanity's right to self-determination, and a promise that Council forces will not enter human space without explicit permission. And if we refuse, Chen's expression became deadly serious. Then we will be forced to take more dramatic action. The next demonstration will not be limited to patrol fleets. He cut the communication channel before the Council could respond. Around him, the bridge crew maintained their professional composure, but he could sense their mixture of pride and fear. They had just announced to the galaxy's ruling powers that humanity was no longer a species that could be ignored or dismissed. Now they would have to wait and see whether the Council was smart enough to accept the new reality, or foolish enough to test humanity's resolve further. Chen hoped it would be the former, but he was prepared for the latter. The Void Lances were just the beginning of what humanity had built in the shadows. If the Council wanted to escalate this conflict, they were going to discover that they had severely underestimated the species they had dismissed as primitive mammals. The demonstration was over. Now came the real test. The War Host was the largest military formation the Galactic Council had assembled in over 1,000 years. 10,000 ships from all 12 member species hung in space like a metal storm cloud, their combined firepower enough to sterilize entire star systems. The fleet stretched across hundreds of thousands of kilometers, a display of force so overwhelming that most civilizations would surrender at the mere sight of it. Speaker Thane Ka stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Dominion, surrounded by holographic displays showing the massive fleet's formation. Representatives from each Council species were present, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of crystals, gas clouds, insects, and stranger things that defied easy description. The humans have had 72 additional hours to consider their position, Thane Ka announced, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. They have made no attempt to contact us, no effort to negotiate. No sign that they understand the consequences of defying the Council. The Vorthak military commander, a massive insect called Hive General Krex, clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Good, this charade has gone on long enough. Whatever trick they use to fake the destruction of our patrol fleets, they will not be able to repeat it against a force of this magnitude. Our scientists have analyzed the censored data from the 3 incidents, added the Zephyrian representative, her crystalline body refracting light in complex patterns. While the gravitational readings are unusual, there are several known technologies that could produce similar effects. Holographic projectors combined with gravitic mines could easily fool standard sensors. The Nebula Collective's military advisor swirled with dark, confident colors. The humans are clearly desperate. They know they cannot win a conventional war, so they resort to elaborate deceptions. When they see the War Host approaching their colony world, they will abandon this foolish pretense. Thane Ka nodded slowly. The Council's top scientists and military analysts had spent days studying the apparent destruction of the 3 patrol fleets. While they couldn't explain exactly how the humans had faked it, they were unanimous in their conclusion that no primitive species could possibly possess weapons advanced enough to actually create controlled black holes. The technology required was simply beyond what humanity should be capable of achieving. The target is New Geneva, Thane Ka announced, a human colony world with approximately 2 million inhabitants. We will make an example of their defiance that will be remembered for millennia. The War Host began moving through hyperspace, Their destination a star system that humanity had claimed as sovereign territory. Intelligence reports indicated that New Geneva was lightly defended, with perhaps a dozen human warships and some orbital defense platforms. Against 10,000 council ships, it would be a massacre that would demonstrate once and for all the futility of challenging the galactic order. 3 hours later, the war host dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. What they found waiting for them was not what anyone had expected. 50 human ships hung in a defensive formation around the colony world. Just 50 ships facing 10,000. The council commanders felt a moment of confusion. Surely the humans had more ships than this. Surely they wouldn't actually try to fight such impossible odds. Then the sensors began registering readings that made no sense. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice puzzled, "I'm getting strange readings from the human ships. Their hulls appear to be fluctuating. The sensors can't get a solid lock. On the main display, the human ships seem to be surrounded by areas where space itself looked wrong. Reality appeared to bend and twist around each vessel, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly." Admiral Sarah Park's voice came over the communication system, broadcast on all frequencies. "Council Warhost, this is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of human sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Hive General Krex let out a sound that might have been laughter. 50 ships against 10,000, and they demand that we withdraw? The arrogance of these mammals knows no bounds. "Perhaps they're hoping we'll be impressed by their light show," the Zephyrian added, referring to the strange distortions around the human vessels. Thane Ka opened a channel to respond. "Admiral Park, your bravery is noted but pointless. You face the combined might of the Galactic Council. Surrender now and your colony will be spared." "I'm afraid that's not going to happen," Park replied calmly. "This is your final warning. Leave our system now." The Vorthak commander moved to his weapons console. "Enough of this. All ships open fire. Show these primitives what real power looks like." The war host opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars. 10,000 ships unleashed concentrated destruction that should have reduced the human fleet to atoms in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The weapons simply stopped existing when they reached the space around the human ships. Energy beams vanished as if they had never been fired. Kinetic projectiles disappeared without impact or explosion. Plasma torpedoes winked out of existence as they crossed some invisible barrier. "What?" Hive General Krex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "Our weapons are showing direct hits, but there's no damage to their ships. No damage at all." "The readings don't make sense," reported the tactical officer. "It's as if our weapons are being translated into a different dimension the moment they reach the target area." Admiral Park's voice came over the communication system again, still perfectly calm. "Your conventional weapons cannot harm us, Council Fleet. Our ships exist partially outside normal space-time. Your attacks are being redirected into parallel dimensions where they can do no damage." The command center fell silent. Every military theory they knew said this was impossible. Matter and energy couldn't just be shifted between dimensions at will. The technology required would be beyond anything even the Council's most advanced species had dreamed of. "Impossible," the Zephyrian whispered, her light patterns flickering with what looked like fear. "No species has ever achieved dimensional manipulation on this scale." Park's flagship, the Horizon's Edge, suddenly moved in a way that violated every law of physics the Council understood. One moment it was in front of them. The next it had appeared, directly above the warhost formation without traveling through the space between. "Allow me to demonstrate," Park said. The human ship's hull began to glow with an energy that registered on sensors as something between matter and pure thought. Space around the Horizon's Edge started to tear like fabric, opening a rift that revealed something beyond the normal universe. Through the tear in reality, the Council fleet could see impossible things. Stars being moved like chess pieces, entire planets being reshaped by forces that treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions, and in the distance something that made their sensors scream warnings. A brown dwarf star that was clearly being controlled, its massive bulk held in place by human technology, its stellar wind being channeled through conduits that existed in dimensions the Council had never known existed. "This is not possible," Thane Ka said. his mechanical voice barely above a whisper. The energy requirements alone. The level of technology needed. We are not the primitive species you believe us to be, Park replied. We have spent the last century learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Your weapons are based on conventional physics. Ours transcend the limitations of normal spacetime. The rift in space began to close, but not before the Council fleet got a clear view of human engineering on a scale that dwarfed anything they had ever conceived. They had thought their own technology was advanced, but what they had just witnessed was like comparing stone tools to quantum computers. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system, Park continued. After that, we will be forced to take more direct action. I suggest you spend that time considering whether the Council's pride is worth the lives of everyone in your fleet. The communication channel closed, leaving the war host alone with the impossible sight of 50 human ships that had just proven themselves immune to the combined firepower of 10,000 Council vessels in the command center of the Eternal Dominion. The representatives of 12 ancient civilizations stared at each other in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand that they had severely underestimated the species they had dismissed as primitive mammals. The age of Council dominance was ending, and none of them had seen it coming. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 18 straight hours. In the grand chambers on Kepler Prime, representatives from 12 species argued, pleaded, and threatened each other in a cacophony of alien languages that overwhelmed even the advanced translation systems. Some wanted immediate negotiations with humanity. The crystalline hegemony, led by the Zephyrians, had seen enough of human technology to recognize that they were facing something beyond their understanding. The Nebula Collective had run probability calculations that showed a less than 3% chance of Council victory in a full-scale war, but the Vorthak Dominion would not listen to reason. Hive General Krex stood in the center of the chamber, his black insect shell reflecting the chamber's lights like armor. Around him, the other Vorthak representatives clicked and chittered in their harsh language, their mandibles snapping with aggressive emphasis. We will not bow to mammals, Krex declared, his translated voice filled with rage. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak have been the military arm of this council. We have conquered worlds, subjugated species, and maintained order through strength. We will not allow a pack of primitive apes to destroy everything we have built. Speaker Thane's mechanical form remained motionless at the head of the chamber. Hive General, the tactical reports from New Geneva are clear. Human technology appears to be beyond our current understanding. Perhaps negotiation would be wiser than continued confrontation. Lies and tricks, Krex snarled. No species develops technology that advanced in less than 2 centuries. They are using elaborate deceptions, advanced holographics, maybe some kind of psychic manipulation. The Vorthak have faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. The Zephyrian representative flashed patterns of deep concern. Hive General, our sensor data has been analyzed by the best scientists in the galaxy. The gravitational distortions, the dimensional rifts, the matter displacement, these are not illusions. Then explain how they work, Krex challenged. Show me the scientific principles behind their weapons. If you cannot, then you cannot prove they are real. It was a trap, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The human technology operated on principles so advanced that even the Council's greatest minds couldn't understand them. But the inability to explain something didn't make it false. It just made it terrifying. The debate might have continued for days, but it was interrupted by an urgent communication from Vorthak High Command. Krex activated his personal communicator, and the chamber fell silent as they listened to the report. Hive General, came the voice of Fleet Commander Zek. We have prepared the planet breakers as ordered. All 7 units are in position around the human home system. We await your command to begin the demonstration. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Planet breakers were the Council's ultimate weapon, massive devices capable of literally cracking worlds apart by destabilizing their tectonic systems. They had been used only twice in galactic history, both times to make examples of species that had challenged Council authority. You cannot be serious, the Nebula Collective representative said, its gaseous form turning colors that indicated absolute horror. You would destroy an entire world? Not destroy, Krex corrected. Demonstrate. We will begin with their moon. Show them that all their dimensional tricks mean nothing when we can break apart the very ground beneath their feet. Thane-Ka stood up, his mechanical form towering over the chamber. Hive General, this action has not been authorized by the full council. The planet breakers are weapons of last resort. The council has shown itself incapable of dealing with this threat, Krex replied. The Vorthak invoked the Emergency Powers Clause. We will act to preserve galactic stability. Before anyone could stop him, Krex activated his command authorization. Light years away, 7 massive weapons platforms began their terrible work. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb was in his laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. The temporal monitoring system, humanity's most classified piece of technology, was registering massive distortions in the space-time continuum around Luna. Director Webb, his assistant, called out, "We're detecting tachyon bombardment of the moon's surface. Someone is using planet crackers." Webb's face went pale. Planet crackers were theoretical weapons that humanity's scientists had studied but never built. They worked by sending streams of exotic particles backward through time, weakening the target's molecular structure in the past so that it would be more vulnerable to destruction in the present. The moon began to crack. Fissures appeared on Luna's surface that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. The ancient satellite that had watched over humanity for millions of years was being torn apart by forces that attacked it through the 4th dimension. "Activate the Sol defense grid," Webb ordered. "Full power. Authorization Omega-7. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "the grid has never been tested at full power. We don't know what the side effects might be." "The side effects of not using it are worse," Webb replied grimly. The Sol defense grid was humanity's deepest secret, a network of devices hidden throughout the solar system that could manipulate causality itself. It was based on research that had taken 50 years to complete and required more energy than Earth's entire civilization used in a decade. Webb initiated the activation sequence, his fingers flying over controls that most humans weren't even allowed to know existed. Around the solar system, hidden installations began drawing power directly from the quantum foam that underlied reality itself. The grid came online just as the moon was beginning to break apart. Chunks of lunar rock were spinning away into space, and the gravitational disruptions were already causing massive tides on Earth's oceans. Then reality rewrote itself. The planet breakers had never existed. The tachyon bombardment had never happened. The 7 massive weapons platforms that had taken decades to build and position simply ceased to have ever been created. More than that, the entire Vorthak attack fleet that had delivered the planet breakers was erased from history. In the space around Earth, where moments before there had been cracking weapons and hostile ships, there was now nothing but empty vacuum. The moon hung whole and undamaged in its orbit, as if nothing had ever threatened it. But the side effects of the temporal manipulation rippled outward through space-time like waves on a pond. Every Vorthak military installation within 50 light years simply ceased to exist. Thousands of warships, hundreds of bases, entire fleets that had been built over centuries, all of them edited out of history as if they had never been constructed. In the council chambers on Kepler Prime, Hive General Krex was in the middle of declaring victory when he suddenly stopped speaking. His mandibles opened and closed silently, as his personal communicator failed to connect to ships and bases that no longer existed. "Fleet Commander Zek," he called desperately, "report status of planet breaker deployment." Static was the only response. "All Vorthak units, respond immediately," Krex ordered, his voice rising to a panicked shriek. Nothing. Across an entire sector of space, the Vorthak military had simply vanished, not destroyed, erased. Removed from the timeline so completely that there was no record they had ever existed. A new voice spoke over the communication system, calm and terrifyingly controlled. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb, Director of Temporal Research for the Terran Defense Force." The chamber fell silent. Every alien representative stared at the communication panel as if it were a bomb. "Moments ago," Webb continued, "Vorthak forces attempted to destroy Earth's moon using planet-cracking technology. This attack was prevented by humanity's temporal defense systems. As a consequence, the attacking forces and their supporting infrastructure have been removed from the timeline." "Impossible," Krex whispered, but his voice carried no conviction. The technology we have just employed allows us to edit causality itself, Webb explained. We can prevent events from ever having occurred. We can erase entire civilizations from history. We can rewrite the past to suit our needs. The implications hit the council members like a physical blow. A species that could manipulate time itself was beyond any threat they had ever faced. How could you fight an enemy that could make your weapons never have been built? How could you defeat someone who could erase your victories before they happened? However, Webb continued, humanity prefers not to use such extreme measures. We are prepared to restore the Vorthak forces to the timeline in exchange for immediate and unconditional surrender by the Galactic Council. Krex looked around the chamber wildly, seeing the fear in every alien face. His entire military force had been reduced to nothing in an instant. His species' power, built over millennia, had been wiped away as if it were a chalk mark on a board. You cannot do this, he said weakly. The natural order, the laws of physics. The laws of physics are tools, Webb replied. Humanity has learned to use them. The question now is whether the Council will accept the new reality, or whether we will be forced to take more permanent measures. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Every species that had once ruled the galaxy now faced the undeniable truth that they were no longer the most advanced civilization in the universe. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council's formal surrender, and the galaxy was learning to live in a universe where humanity held ultimate power. The ceremony had been simple, 12 ancient civilizations bowing before a species they had once considered primitive, acknowledging humanity's right to reshape galactic civilization as they saw fit. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood once again in the council chambers on Kepler Prime, but everything had changed. The grand chamber that had once been designed to make visitors feel small now seemed almost quaint. The alien representatives who had once laughed at humanity's demands now waited quietly for her words, knowing that their civilization's futures depended on her decisions. Honored former council members, Elena began, and even that phrase carried weight. They were no longer the council. That authority had been dissolved. They were simply the representatives of species that had once ruled but now served. We have completed our assessment of galactic governance structures and are ready to announce our decisions. The Zephyrian representative flickered with nervous light patterns. Since humanity had demonstrated temporal manipulation capabilities, her species had been desperately trying to prove their usefulness to the new order. The crystalline hegemony had offered their entire scientific database to human researchers, hoping to avoid the fate that had befallen the Vorthak. The Vorthak themselves were still trying to understand what had happened to them. Dr. Webb had restored their military forces to the timeline as promised. But the psychological damage was permanent. An entire warrior culture had been forced to confront the fact that all their strength, all their pride could be erased at humanity's whim. Hive General Krex now spent his days in meditation, trying to come to terms with his species' new place in the universe. We have studied your histories, your technologies, your cultures, Elena continued. We have observed how you have governed the galaxy for 3 millennia, and we have reached some conclusions. The chamber was so silent that the alien representatives could hear their own breathing apparatus functioning. They expected conquest, slavery, or at best a harsh occupation that would reduce their once mighty civilizations to vassal states. First, Elena said, we acknowledge that the council system, despite its flaws, maintained relative peace and stability for thousands of years. The galaxy is better for having had your guidance. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not what they had expected. Second, Elena continued, we recognize that each of your species possesses knowledge, wisdom, and capabilities that humanity lacks. You have explored corners of science we have never considered. You have developed art forms we have never imagined. You have solved social problems we have never faced. Speaker Thane Ka's mechanical form shifted slightly. Ambassador Vasquez, we do not understand. Are we not to be enslaved? Conquered? Made examples of for resisting your authority? Elena smiled, and for the first time in months it was a warm expression rather than a diplomatic mask. Speaker Thane Ka, humanity did not develop reality-altering technology in order to become galactic tyrants. We developed it because we needed to survive in a universe that seemed determined to crush us. She activated a holographic display that showed images from human space. Instead of the military installations the aliens expected, they saw something extraordinary. Human cities where alien children played in parks designed for multiple species. Research stations where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that neither could accomplish alone. Trade ships carrying goods between species that had never interacted directly before. For the past 6 months, Elena explained, while you have been fearing conquest, we have been building something new. Not a human empire, but a collaborative civilization where each species contributes their unique strengths to the common good. The Nebula Collective's representative swirled with colors that indicated amazement. You are not replacing the council with human rule. We are replacing the council with something better, Elena replied. The Terran Protectorate is not a government in the traditional sense. It is a framework for cooperation between species, protected by human military technology, but guided by the combined wisdom of all member civilizations. She gestured, and the hologram changed to show the new structure. Humans provided defense and advanced technology. The Zephyrians contributed their mastery of energy manipulation. The Nebula Collective offered their computational abilities. Even the Vorthak had found a role as security specialists and tactical advisors. But surely there must be conditions, the Vorthak representative said nervously. Some price for your protection and guidance? Elena nodded. There are requirements. No member species may wage war on another. No civilization may oppress or exploit weaker neighbors. All members must contribute to the common defense and the advancement of galactic civilization. And all members must be willing to learn from others, even species they once considered inferior. She paused, looking directly at each representative. But perhaps most importantly, all members must accept that the age of believing one species is naturally superior to all others is over. We are stronger together than any of us could be alone. The chamber fell silent as the alien representatives processed this information. They had expected conquest and received partnership. They had feared slavery and been offered cooperation. It was so far from what they had anticipated that many struggled to accept it was real. There is one more thing, Elena added. The Protectorate is not just for the former Council species. We are extending membership invitations to every civilization in the galaxy. Species that were once too weak to have a voice in galactic affairs will now have equal say in our common future. The implications were staggering. Hundreds of minor civilizations that had lived under Council rule would now be full partners in galactic governance. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated galactic politics for millennia was being replaced with something that had never existed before. True equality between species. Why? Thainka asked quietly. You have power beyond our understanding. You could rule absolutely. Why choose this path? Elena thought for a moment before answering. Because absolute rule was never our goal. Humans developed these technologies not to dominate others, but to ensure our own survival and freedom. Now that we have achieved that, we want to use our capabilities to build something better than what came before. She smiled again, and this time, even the alien representatives could see the genuine warmth in her expression. Besides, ruling a galaxy sounds like a lot of work. We would much rather explore it, learn from it, and help it grow. 10 years later, the transformation was complete. The galaxy that had once been divided into rigid territories controlled by ancient powers was now a thriving network of cooperative civilizations. Human children attended schools with dozens of alien species, learning not just mathematics and science, but art forms that had been developed on worlds their grandparents had never imagined visiting. In the research stations orbiting Earth, human scientists worked alongside Zephyrian energy specialists and Nebula Collective computational experts to unlock the secrets of the universe. Projects that would have taken millennia for any single species to complete were finished in decades through collaborative effort. The former council chambers on Kepler Prime had been converted into something new, the Assembly of Worlds, where representatives from over 300 civilizations met to discuss challenges, share discoveries, and plan for a future that no single species could have achieved alone. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now Director of Interspecies Relations, often stood in the renovated chamber and marveled at how much had changed. Where once 12 species had ruled over hundreds, now hundreds worked together as equals. Where once might had made right, now wisdom and cooperation determined policy. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in humanity itself. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive mammals had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a dominant power that chose to lift others up rather than tear them down. The children, who played in the mixed species parks, who learned alien languages as easily as their own, who saw the universe as a place of infinite possibility rather than endless conflict. They were the future. They were what happened when the greatest minds of hundreds of civilizations worked together instead of against each other. Elena often received messages from the former council members, thanking humanity for showing mercy when they could have shown domination. But she always replied the same way. Humanity hadn't shown mercy. They had shown wisdom. They had recognized that the universe was big enough for everyone to thrive, and interesting enough that exploring it together was far more rewarding than fighting over it alone. The galaxy was finally at peace. Not the peace of the conquered, but the peace of the united. It had taken the threat of absolute destruction to teach the galaxy's civilizations that they were stronger together than apart. But the lesson had been learned, and in the depths of space, human exploration vessels continued to push outward, no longer fleeing from oppression but seeking new worlds, new civilizations, and new opportunities to prove that the universe was better when its children worked together rather than against each other.